Awez, and today we're reacting to the Diddy case. What's happening right now? Yeah, dog. What? Like, I have been also been wondering what's really been happening since that whole Diddy case happened. Last I remember, he was going to prison for like three years, or maybe he's not going to prison. I'm not quite sure. I cannot remember. So let's actually see what's going on. I'll be honest with you. That's the bulk of this intro. Let's see what's going on. So without further ado, comment, like, subscribe, and let's start.
Now, it's been over 2 months since the verdict in the P. Diddy case. Out of the 5 counts he was facing, Diddy was let off the hook on the most serious charges, including racketeering and sex trafficking. But the jurors still found him guilty on 2 lesser counts under the Mann Act, which carry a maximum sentence of 10 years each. Ever since then, people have been asking what's actually been happening, because since Diddy isn't free, he's been stuck in limbo as he awaits his sentencing in October. So let's go through some of the biggest updates since the verdict, starting right after the decision came down. There was a strong reaction across the board. A lot of people didn't expect him to dodge the harshest charges. One person who instantly jumped in to troll him was his biggest op, 50 Cent, who posted, "Diddy beat the feds, that boy a bad man, beat the Rico, he the gay John Gotti." But not everyone's response was trolling. Cassie, who was the central witness in this case, didn't directly react, but her lawyer did it on her behalf. He released a statement saying that Cassie had paved the way for these convictions and that she'll be continuing fighting for survivors even after the verdict. Her testimony was one of the most impactful parts of this trial, and it's clear she sees this moment as only the beginning. Aside from Cassie, another person who spoke up after the verdict was Dawn Richard, a singer who used to be in the girl group Danity Kane, who signed to Diddy back in the mid-2000s. Dawn actually testified during the trial that she personally saw Diddy attack Cassie on multiple occasions. She told the jury that he would punch, choke, and slap her, and even recalled one incident where he kicked Cassie in the stomach. Another time, she said he hit her over the head with a skillet full of eggs. After the verdict came down, Dawn showed her support for Cassie, reminding people that this wasn't just about one testimony. Multiple women had spoken up about what they saw and experienced. While all these reactions were playing.
Yeah, so what about the abuse and all those things, like the physical violence, things that we saw? Is he not going to get charged on that? Because all he got charged for was like, what's this, basically traveling between states or whatever. I can't remember really. But what about the other charges? Those charges matters too.
Now publicly, Diddy's team was scrambling behind the scenes. Right after the verdict, they actually started preparing for the possibility that he'd be released on bond. Security at his Miami Star Islands mansion was reportedly beefed up, with guards stationed both at the property and at the island's entrance as paparazzi swarmed. His team even had a private jet on standby in New York, ready to fly him and his family back to Florida if the judge signed off on bail. Of course, that didn't end up happening, but it shows you how much they were banking on him walking out right after the trial. Another voice that chimed in after the verdict was Boosie Badass. He went on Instagram and said that he was happy that Diddy didn't get hit with the most serious charges, but also made it clear that he thinks race played a big role in how this case played out.
I'm tired of seeing us black moguls get took down like that, bro. And I'm tired of seeing us black people go against us black moguls like that. And I feel like if Diddy was a white man who done all this shit for people, if he was white, they would have had so many white people out there protesting for this man.
Boosie essentially said if Diddy was a white man, he would have more public support and that the system would have never dragged him through the mud like this. Now, Boosie's take kind of echoes something a lot of people have said about this particular case right here, which is the belief that Diddy was set up. I will say that I do think that Diddy probably pissed off a lot of the powerful people he did business with, white or black.
I can see that.
It's kind of obvious because if you pay attention, he's been on his own since he started. I mean, if he was really good with a lot of his peers in general, the majority of them would make a public stance and defend him and his reputation, which didn't really happen. One of the only people who came out and said anything was Kanye, but I think a lot of his motive came down to publicity. And Boosie's right in the sense that the public overall hasn't really supported him, but I personally think that's because of the narrative Diddy has built around his own name and less about him getting set up by the system. Another thing that happened right after the verdict was Diddy's legal team immediately pushing for his release. By then, he had already spent 9 months locked up, and they argued that he wasn't a flight risk. His lawyers told the judge that Diddy had been a model inmate, always showing up to court, and that with the right conditions in place, he wouldn't have the opportunity to connect with escorts or get in more trouble. On the other side, Cassie and her lawyer also made their voices heard. They submitted a letter to the court asking the judge to deny Diddy's bail saying he still posed a danger to the victims who testified, including Cassie herself. Another witness even wrote in making the same plea. So while his legal team painted him as a model inmate who deserved to be released, the people who took the stand against him were making it clear they didn't feel safe with him back on the streets. In the end though, the judge wasn't convinced. Right after the verdict, Diddy's lawyers pushed hard for that $1 million bail, saying he had already served 9 months, wasn't a flight risk, and had his kids in the courtroom. His attorney even argued that Diddy was only defending himself in one of the incidents brought up at the trial, but the judge shut it down, and he said that he couldn't prove that he wasn't a danger to the community, pointing directly to the Cassie beating video as well as a testimony that he got violent with a woman who remains a Jane Doe, even after the feds raided his homes in 2024. To the judge, Diddy's behavior showed a disregard for the law and a pattern of violence. Another update that came in after the verdict was a lawsuit filed by a man named Clayton Howard, who actually testified during the trial under the name Dave. He's now suing both Diddy and Cassie, claiming he was manipulated and traumatized during their relationship with him. In his words, he felt like Cassie also played a bigger role than what the court would like to admit in everything Diddy was doing, which is an opinion a lot of people have echoed since this whole thing started. And then we also have the reports that came in mid-July, which was that Diddy was taking part in prison programs aimed at rehabilitation. He's also enrolled in a federal program designed to address sexual assault, domestic violence, and drug abuse. His team is framing it as a path toward redemption, but of course, a lot of people kind of see this as a calculated move. It's common for defendants to show that they're working on themselves before sentencing, hoping it might convince the judge to go easier on them. And then in late July, Diddy actually hopped on social media and dropped an eye emoji on Twitter. You know, the one you send your eater late at night hoping she gonna pull up. The tweet ended up getting deleted right after, and I'm not really sure what he was trying to do right there. And then toward the end of July, Diddy's lawyers took another shot at getting him out on bail. This time, they put together a $50 million bond package tied to his Miami estate with strict conditions like limited travel, home detention, and even electronic monitoring. His team argued that the people convicted under the Mann Act are usually released before sentencing. The Mann Act is a federal law that dates all the way back to 1910, originally created to criminalize transporting individuals across state lines for prostitution. His lawyer tried to downplay those convictions by saying Diddy had simply hired escorts as a part of a swinger lifestyle with Cassie and Jane. They also stated that he'd been mostly non-violent since 2018, aside from one incident with a woman, but despite painting him as a non-violent man, the prosecutors weren't buying it, and as of now, the judge still hasn't budged. Now, shortly after that, Donald Trump's name actually entered the chat. Reports came out that the US president was considering a pardon for Diddy, and this happened after Diddy's legal team actually reached out to Trump asking for help. However, and this is the plot twist, when Trump was asked about it, he stated that this would be more difficult because of the things that Diddy had said about him in the past. Trump admitted that he thought that Diddy was sort of half innocent, but reminded people that back in 2017, Diddy said that he didn't give a F about Trump, and in 2020, he even went further, telling radio host Charlamagne the God that white men like Trump need to be banished.
White men like Trump need to be banished. If this man is elected, we're not standing by no more getting killed. We're not scared of anybody standing up and standing by. We're on the verge of a race war.
Trump said that those comments clouded his judgment and basically admitted that.
Which again, though, what was this whole race war that was like popping up that time period in America? I didn't understand, bro, because from what I was seeing outside looking in, I didn't see the tension. I didn't see anything crazy. But apparently there was niggas being like, yo, race war, which that's stupid, but fine. Doesn't make sense for you to be doing that. Even watch your history, it doesn't make sense for you to be doing that. There's already African Americans in power. There's already white people in power. I mean, white people have always been in power. But there's a lot of other minorities that are in power. Like, why we'll just be eating ourselves?
His personal feelings played into whether he'd consider a pardon for Diddy.
Diddy was a good friend of yours back then. He has since found himself in some very serious legal trouble.
Yeah, that's true.
Would you ever consider pardoning him?
He used to really like me a lot, but I think when I ran for politics, that relationship busted up.
And although the two had a friendship years ago, it's very unlikely that Trump will decide to actually do it. And despite all the noise around a possible pardon from Trump, the judge was on Diddy's ass. No Diddy. On August 4th, the judge denied Diddy's bail for the second time, and that kind of closed the door on any hope of him walking out before getting sentenced. Now, even with all this hanging over Diddy's head, Diddy's lawyer in August was already talking about his plans for after prison. His legal team stated that Diddy's focused on reuniting with his family and taking care of his mother, but he also made it clear that Diddy wants to get back on stage, and one of Diddy's goals is actually, this big-ass comeback at Madison Square Garden, which is interesting because initially when everything went down and he got arrested, Diddy was alleged.
What, so he wants to do a Joop Joop? I mean, Joop Joop was a different whole situation. If you don't know who's Joop Joop, Joop Joop is basically a South African artist that went to prison for a while because he basically ran over kids, right? And then afterwards he came back and did this whole redemption arc, and basically people embraced him again. So wants to do a Joop Joop or something.
Very distraught about being behind bars and didn't really have a lot of hope about his situation. But after the verdict, however, it's very clear that he's mentally preparing for a good outcome. And then we have one of the more interesting moves from Diddy's side. In late August, his lawyers actually tried to get the 2 convictions that Diddy got thrown out, and they also pushed for a new trial. Their argument was basically that these convictions weren't meant for cases like this, since Diddy wasn't making any money off of what he did. They said that he never personally transported anyone, and in their words, was more of a voyeur who just likes to record and watch. A voyeur is basically someone who gets sexual gratification from watching other people do the deed. And they even compared him to a corn producer. But prosecutors fired back immediately, calling the motion complete nonsense. In their filing, they said that the jury had plenty of evidence to convict and painted Diddy as the mastermind who controlled every part of his so-called freak-offs. They also said that this wasn't anything like a porn shoot, pointing out that many of the encounters weren't filmed at all. And when they were, the women often didn't really even know that they were being recorded. In the government's eyes, this was exploitation, plain and simple. As we speak, Diddy is behind bars as he awaits his sentencing on October 3rd, which is right around the corner. It's honestly going to be very interesting to see what really happens. Although Diddy could potentially face up to 20 years behind bars, the prosecution is actually estimating that he's probably going to get somewhere between 51 and 63 months, so around 4 to 5 years. He could get less than that or right around that number, and he's most likely going to get credit for time served. So really, in a situation like this, I'm guessing that Diddy's overall going to be behind bars for 2 more years, 3 tops. Considering the situation he was in, I think that is a W for him. I'm sure that Diddy himself wasn't expecting this outcome, and obviously the public wasn't as well. We'll talk about the story in October again once the sentencing happens, but until then, what do you guys think about some of these updates? Obviously drop a like on this video as well, subscribe, comment for the algorithm, all that good stuff, and I'll catch you guys on the next.
That's crazy though. I mean, that's the thing about like being like powerful in Ish, bro. A lot of things don't affect you as easily as it would affect other people, bro. It just wouldn't. I don't think like watching this I would be like, what did I expect? For real. I really thought, yo, because they said 10 max. I'm like, okay, cool. That means he's probably gonna get 20. No. Probably gonna get 5. I mean, probably gonna get 2, not even 5. See, what's the problem, guys? It's being broke. You have to stop being broke, dog. That's what we gotta do. So without further ado, thank you for watching the rest of the video. Thank you for chilling with your Owen. Comment, like, subscribe. Let's wait. I did it again, bro. I need to go drink water and like re-download my brain. I've been watching a few videos. I didn't even eat yet, so yeah, it's crazy. Thank you for watching the rest of the video. Thank you for chilling with your Owen. Comment, like, subscribe. Until next time, I've been the Lost Owen. We out.